originating from the podcast studio inside FAM 360's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. The Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire our audience through a combination of inspirational stories and real-life experiences shared by other successful and skilled leaders in a variety of vocations. We hope that the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast empowers each one of us to step out, step up, and ultimately thrive as leaders. Now here's our host, Mr. Matt Maloney.
Hello, and welcome back to the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Matt Maloney, and I am yet again delighted to welcome back Mr. Drew Hamilton. Drew, welcome.
Thank you.
Last episode, if you haven't caught it, I recommend listening to the first episode of this two-part series with Drew Hamilton. Last episode, we learned a little bit about Drew, his upbringing, where he grew up, how he was really called into leadership at an early age, 8 years old, to start his newspaper, the Lake Hamilton News.
That's it.
The Lake Hamilton News. And then really how, just from my perspective, God ordained everything of how he became a great athlete, was recruited by none other than Mr. Bobby Bowden to go to a junior college to play basketball. Some disappointment that he had when he went to the University of Georgia, thinking he was going on a scholarship, but he ended up getting called in a different direction, which ultimately led him into the Navy, where he thrived, obviously, as a naval officer and ultimately became a Navy SEAL. And today, on this episode, we're really going to learn and dig in a little bit about Drew's professional career after the Navy, learn about his family, his leadership in his professional career, and really how his faith journey has led him to continue to be a servant leader, even now in retirement, both for his family and helping others in the community. So before we get into all of that, let's start off with a little icebreaker. First of all, what's your favorite food?
Gosh, I'm a foodie, so I'd have to tell you that I like to try different things, and I like a lot of food. But if you're going to narrow it down to one, I like. I'm an Asian. I like Chinese food.
Okay.
Try different things, but Chinese would probably be my favorite food.
Okay. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Chinese. I'm a foodie as well. There are foods that maybe I don't like as much as others, but I love just about all food. In fact, my wife and I and the kids went to a Thai restaurant the other day that we've never been to, right around the corner from our house. And it's become my, at least right now, favorite restaurant. Yeah. It was remarkable. So, okay. So Drew, you've done all these great things, and now you're retired, and we're going to get into some of your professional career. But before we do, hobbies, what do you like to do? What is I know you grew up as an athlete. Do you still like to do athletic activities and sports? What do you do?
I do as much as my knees will let me, but
sure.
Yeah, the main thing I do nowadays is fish. I love fishing. I'm a bass fisherman. I've been on to Mexico, to the #1 bass lake in the world. I used to go 2 or 3 times a year with a friend of mine who's a big fisherman too. And we've been to Canada fishing way up north, almost to the Northwest Territory. And so I do like fishing. I love all sports, follow them closely. Big University of Georgia fan.
I knew that. Congratulations to your Bulldogs for winning the football national championship this last year.
It's about time.
It's about time, right?
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Florida State to come back, and it's coming, folks. It's coming.
But I used to play golf, and I wasn't very good, and I played tennis, and then I got to, where I still like to work out, but the only sport I do now is walking, and I do the gym. But it's hard when you get I'm 81 years old, so still kicking.
That's great. That's great.
In good health.
Well, you're gonna have to give me some tips on the bass fishing. I love to fish. I love to fish bass fishing, done it several times. I'm mostly on the river, mostly a river guy. In fact, for several years in a row, I would take my girls. My son was too young. He's 8 now, so he can go now, but he was too young. I'd take my girls on spring break, and we'd spend a day on the river, trout fishing and fly fishing. I'd get a guide so that I could split off with them, and he could help one of them, and I could help another one. And frankly, I needed help too, but what a great sport that is. is. I love fishing. So, well, great. Thanks for sharing that. So today I'd like to kind of understand your transition from, the Navy, becoming a Navy SEAL. You thought that you wanted to have a career in the Navy.
Correct.
You decided at some point during that process that you weren't going to have a career in the Navy, and there was some sort of catalyst or something that as they say, there was some sort of straw that broke the camel's back there and said, I'm not going to have a career in the Navy. And you decided to move into a professional career in the private sector. So talk to me about why you decided to leave the Navy, if there was some big thing that took place, and then certainly where you went to seek a professional career.
Yeah, well, as I said, the last year in the Navy, thinking I was going to make a career, I got on a Navy ship, which you need ship experience, and I was a navigator on the ship, and the captain. I had a great captain my first few years my first few months on the ship, but the last 4 or 5 months we got a new captain, and one day we were coming into port, and he told me he wanted me to paint the mast. Now, to paint the mast, you have to moor away from the docks because you have to bring a barge alongside and spray paint. All the masts are the real thing that go way up to the top with the radar and the communications equipment on them. And I told him, well, we have to moor away from the dock. And he said, no, we don't. I said, yes, sir. And he pulled up alongside 2 other ships, and we were outboard or the furthest ship out. And he said, I want you to spray paint the mast. And I said, well, it's windy, and we're going to get spray all over these other ships. And he said, Mr. Hamilton, when I give you an order, you do it. And I said, yes, Captain. So we did it. And my team people that were going to do this thought I was crazy. And I said, this is what we're going to do. And so they brought the barge alongside to spray paint with the crane, and we were up spray painting the mast, and all of a sudden you heard the commanding officer of the Navy base Mayport arriving, and he came on the ship, and the next thing I heard was Mr. Hamilton report to the wardroom. And I go up there, the captain said to me, you're not painting the mast, are you? I said, yes, sir, Captain, we are. You told me to. Because I knew where this was leading. And I'd had about enough of him. There had been other instances, and you can't be disrespectful.
No. But you were being factual because he told you to do it.
And he said, Mr. Hamilton, are you going to pay for all the cars and other ships you're getting paint all over? I said, no, sir. And he said, well, I suggest you stop painting the mast. And I said, yes, sir. And I left, told him to stop. And then the commanding officer of the base left. And the next thing I heard was Mr. Hamilton report to the wardroom. I go up to the wardroom, and the captain said, don't you ever embarrass me in front of my senior captain again. He said, I'll give you a bad fitness report. I said, yes, sir, Captain, I'm sorry. I said, I was just doing what you told me to do. And he knew.
Yeah, of course.
So he didn't say anything more, but I knew then that if I was going to stay in the Navy and my career could depend on one person that can ruin your career or make your career, that's not what I wanted. And plus all the travel, and I wanted to get married and have kids and teach them how to play ball.
Yeah.
So I got out of the Navy, and that's when I came back to Atlanta.
And that's how you were introduced to, well, first of all, what a great example of poor leadership.
Poor leadership.
Right. And I think that we have to recognize that. So, and for you, kudos to you to recognizing that and saying, you know what, this is not for me. I want to be able to make my mark somewhere else and be able to, of course, start your family. So you moved to Atlanta. How did you get to State Farm Insurance? Because that's where you spent the bulk of your, or if not all of your career. I
did. I was looking for a job, and I was interviewing at different places, and I almost decided to go to work for Delta in human resources. And I saw an ad in the paper one morning. I didn't have anything to do that day, and it said college graduates, big letters. And the State Farm office, they had an office near me where I lived, and it said we're hiring college graduates for claim adjusters. I didn't know what that was. And so I went to interview for the job, and I walked in and asked the lady at the desk, I said, how much does this job pay? And she said, well, I don't know, but I can get you an interview. And I said, no, I'm not interested. Turned around and walked out the door. She got up from her desk, followed me down the steps, said, you come back here. You'd be good at this job. And so I turned around.
She knew. She was prompted by something to know to come chase after you.
I said, well, okay. And I was joking with her. She was an older lady, older than me. And so she got me an interview. They offered me a job. I turned them down. That night, I got a call from the regional office, which was in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was a human resources. And they said, we'd like to talk to you. We understood you came in and applied for a job. I said, well, they offered me a job. He said, they can't do that. I said, well, they did. And he said, well, they're claim people. And he said, we're in human resources. I think I can paint the picture better and you'll be more interested. So it was in Jacksonville where I'd been last in the Navy, and they wanted me to fly down there and interview with them. And I said, if you're paying for it, I'll come. They did. I flew down there, and they convinced me while I was there, not accepting the job, but to go ahead and take the physical in case I wanted to take. They knew what they were doing.
Of course they did.
And so I got all that done and went back, and they offered me a company car. And
wow.
And all gas paid for.
First job, offer you a company car.
I said, I'm going with you, not Delta. And
hook, line, and sinker right there.
I went to work with State Farm as a automobile claim adjuster, handling automobile claims. I got to learn a lot about law, and about later went to law school because at night, because I wanted to learn more about the law, because I dealt with the law and with a lot of lawyers. And I said, well, gosh, if those guys can be lawyers, I can be a lawyer too.
Yeah.
And I had the GI Bill. So I went to night law school while I was working at State Farm.
So you were working at State Farm, going to night school to get your JD, your law degree, right?
Juris Doctor.
Yeah, through that process. And how long? Well, how long did that take? Did you graduate and finish law school in the 4 years? That
it actually took 3.
3 years or 3 years. Yeah.
3 in the summer.
Yeah.
You had to go one summer to moot court.
Okay.
And 3 other years. So I got my Juris Doctor degree, and they passed a law in Georgia at that time that you had to pay $500 for a background check to take the bar.
Sure.
I didn't have the money, and I was getting married, and they promoted me at State Farm, so I didn't even take the bar. It was just nothing I didn't need to do at State Farm, but I learned a lot in dealing with lawyers and having a law degree. It really helped me as I progressed through the company.
Yeah, it helped you understand a lot of things. I mean, you had a better understanding of obviously the law, but also it, expanded your mind into helping you in other things. So State Farm, let me back up. How long were you at your whole career from beginning to finish? How long was your whole career at State Farm?
36 years.
36 years. Yeah. I mean, you don't, that's impressive. You don't see that often.
No, not nowadays. People move around after a few years.
That's true.
Back when I joined, people stayed with the company.
Yeah.
And, I hadn't intended to. I thought I'd stay there for 2 or 3 years till I decided how I was going to get rich.
Yeah.
And, that didn't happen, but State Farm was a wonderful company, a people-oriented company, a wonderful company to work for. And the one thing I'd say is in my whole career in 36 years, not one time did I ever hear anybody in leadership above me tell me to cheat anybody or do anything that was wrong. I got to make my own decisions about liability, about how much a claim was worth. And I like the fact that they gave you that kind of authority and let you do it.
Well, when you think back at State Farm, and so you were there, you started off as a claims adjuster, and you grew throughout your career. Are there moments in time that stand out, or people along that journey that stand out that really spoke into you and encouraged you, and really were a reflection of great leaders that you can maybe speak to?
I had a manager. He was in Jacksonville, but he believed in me, and he pushed me to. I was taking insurance courses. I got a CPCU and a CLU, which are insurance courses that you kind of like getting a master's degree in insurance, and he was always encouraging me. And I had when I was a first line supervisor, I had a superintendent, and everybody knew he was a wonderful guy, but everybody knew he wasn't very effective. And one day he came to me and he said they just demoted me back to being a supervisor. And I knew we didn't have any openings for supervisors because there were 2 of us that were the supervisors. And I said, oh my God, that was my first time I felt, what? This company would do that? And even though I knew he was not an effective superintendent.
Sure.
And I said, well, who's going to take your job? Who would be my boss? And he said, you are, if I have anything to do with it. And I thought about that, and I said, he would recommend me after he got demoted. Anyway, they promoted me. So one day he was my boss. The next day I was his boss.
Wow.
And that kind of, both ways, it kind of got me good and bad. But
that's great.
As I look back on that, Matt, my manager that did that had to have courage and guts, because it was the right move, not just for me, for the company.
For the company.
And he's the kind of, I watched him as I grew. He was my manager till I went to our home office in the headquarters. And he made those kind of decisions that, they weren't popular, but they were the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because until that time, it was just a kind of a, live and let live.
Yeah.
And nobody instructed you about doing anything wrong.
Well, they probably weren't talking a lot about it back then, but one of the greatest, one of the strongest attributes of great leaders, or people that, and whether they're in a management role or not, they're still leaders, is EQ, or emotional intelligence. And for someone to make decisions that are, maybe they're not popular, but they're good for the company. And for him to have the humility to get demoted and say, you know what, I'm going to make sure they promote you, because I think you have what it takes to lead, and I want to support you and work with you. That's a leader.
Yeah. And he was a great guy and did well in his role. I worked with him when he worked with me when I was his superintendent, and he did a good job. Just a nice guy, and the Peter principle. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Sure.
Yeah, everybody gets promoted one job beyond what they're capable of, mm-hmm. and he was an example of it.
Yeah,
because when he went back, he did a great job.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody's got everybody's like a puzzle piece. They have their position in place in the organization where they are the most useful. And so he recognized that. So you were promoted from there. How did you grow in State Farm? Where did you grow to in terms of your leadership in the organization?
Yeah, well, I became a claim manager here. We called it the divisional claim superintendent in Atlanta. I was over all of Atlanta claims, meaning we had 3 offices, and they all reported to me as far as claims. That's when I really loved that job, maybe my favorite job with the company. And then from there, I got promoted to being a division manager in Bloomington, Illinois. After that, a few years, I got promoted to the president's office as an executive assistant to the president. Name was Ed Rust, one of the greatest leaders I've ever met. And I learned so much from him and from all the people there. Every job I had, the leadership, I learned from people above me that,
sure.
And I watched and saw what they did. And I always felt like if you do a good job at the job you're doing, you'll get promoted. Sure. I knew people that were always looking to get promoted, and you could tell it was obvious. I loved every job I ever had, and I wasn't really caring at the time if I got promoted or not.
You were a team player. I mean, that's what you were there to support, to do and execute on whatever your job was, but you were a team, and that is why you got promoted versus, you see people, and it's unfortunate, but people in certain really toxic corporate cultures where they're trying to push other people down just to push themselves up. And right. Obviously you were the polar opposite of that. So speaking of if I were to ask and go to people that worked for you, what would they say? Hey, Drew, this is the kind of leader Drew was. What do you think they would say?
Well, I think they would say, and I hope they would say, that I was a people person. I listened. I have a lot of people call me still today and say, I wish you'd come back. I said, oh, no, I'm too old.
I'm done. When you had conflict within the organization, maybe it was between you and a superior, you and a subordinate, or people that are your peers on your team, how did you deal with disagreement? What's your style of dealing with disagreements or conflict?
I think the way I dealt with conflict mostly was face to face. I sat down with somebody and I said, let me hear your side of this. Or, if there's more than one person, I'd get them together. We'd talk it out and we'd try to resolve the issue. I think too many people nowadays, and of course I'm an old dog. I've been I'm an old school kind of guy, but I think too much, and I saw this even before I retired, too much supervision by memo, email. People like to send emails. They don't want to talk to people.
Right.
I think if you sit down and talk to somebody, you can resolve conflict. And I never had that as a problem because I think that if you listen, number one, and you have the right culture, that's important as a leader, that you set the culture for your company.
Yeah.
Then people know what you expect. And when there's a difference of agreement, you sit down and you talk it out.
That's right.
And to me,
have a transparent conversation.
Correct.
I talk about this a lot. Ray Dalio, who's head of Bridgewater Investments, they have a culture where they have what he calls radical transparency. And when they say radical transparency, they mean radical transparency. After every single meeting, people get to essentially provide feedback to every person that was in that meeting about what they thought about how their demeanor, their tone, their tenor, what they think is wrong or right. But once they get past all of the emotional component of it, they have the highest emotional intelligence in probably any organization, because the people are really transparent and they can come together and come to the table and know that they're really there as a team for a bigger cause that they're working towards.
That's important.
Oh, it's incredible. So thank you for sharing all that. I'd like to pivot, because I think I want the audience to know a little bit about your family, your wife. I think this goes without saying, but behind any great person is a great spouse. Behind any great man like yourself is a great wife. I'd like to hear a little bit about just your family, your children, and then dovetail into how has your wife and your marriage helped you in understanding how to be a better leader in the community that you're in?
Well, first of all, let me agree with you. If it weren't for my wife, I wouldn't have done the things I did. And she was
Amen.
A helpmate all the way along. And I'd like to brag for a minute and say that in June of this year, we'll be married 49 years.
Wow.
And so I'm hoping I make it to 50.
Congratulations.
And longer.
No, you will.
But my wife has been wonderful with when you're working and traveling for the job. I believe strongly in balance, work-life balance, that you have to put the family in there. I have two children, a boy and a girl. Scott and Whitney, and I have 6 grandchildren. Whitney has 2 children, 2 girls, and Scott has 2 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
And I love my children. I love my grandchildren. And if you were to ask me what the most important thing in my life is, I would tell you it's my family.
Of course.
My wife was such a strong influence, because if you're out of town for the week on business, you don't want to have to worry about, is everything going to get taken care of at home? Can my wife take care of any problem that comes up? And she was very instrumental in my success because of the way she was able to take care of things at home, and still is to this day, by the way. She keeps me straight. Let's put it that way. She's such a wonderful, godly woman. It just makes me very proud that she's my wife.
Well, I was talking about this in a group that I'm in with some other men, and we were just talking about how, God has this whole thing wired in a way that, our wives know at the right time exactly what we need and what we don't need, and they press into us. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable or not, but I've found that when I'm lifting my wife up, when I'm really lifting her up and encouraging her, I, in return, am doing better in my own life. That's just how God wired it. And so I commend you for pointing that out and talking about your wife. Thanks for sharing that. So when did you retire from State Farm?
I retired in 2002.
Okay.
So I'm in my 21st year of retirement.
Yeah. And you don't strike me as a person who sits around and does nothing. So as the kind of leader and the kind of training that you've had throughout your career, how has that bled over into retirement, and what are you doing today?
I'm involved with Duluth Hands of Christ Co-op. It's a food bank, and we do help people financially. And I work there, have been working there. This is probably my 15th year. I've done everything from working in the food bank part of it, to packing food, packing bags, to taking it to people and giving it out. But my job now is to take care of people that need financial help. And that's what I do. And I enjoy that because you get to help a lot of people, and they give you a lot of authority and make the decisions. And our director's a wonderful lady. She's very generous and very good to work for because she gives you the authority. I always said you can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility, because as a leader, you're still responsible.
That's right.
But if they give you enough authority to do the job and let you do it, which is what I try to do as a leader, and I find that I like that, and she does that. So when she's on vacation, I do her job.
Well, that's you're a true servant leader, Drew. So thanks for sharing that. Couple of questions, couple of wrap-up questions. Is there a life motto, scripture, creed, or just standard that you live by? Any sort of thing that really resonates with you, that says, this is kind of my motto that I live by in life? Well,
yeah, first of all, I would say I got a couple there that I want to say. I had a motto while I was working that people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So if you get to know the people and they know that you care about them, they'll work for you. I think it's in Philippians. It talks about how make other people more significant than yourself, or humble yourself before the Lord. There's a lot in the Bible about being humble. We're all here. We're all doing a job, and we're all important.
Guys, if that is not above and beyond leadership, and that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, that's remarkable. Thank you for sharing that. This was such good stuff that we could go on. I want to have you on for another episode. I'd like to wrap up with this closing quote about wisdom. It's from Proverbs 3:13-18. It says, "Blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding, for the gain from her is better than the gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She's a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called blessed." Drew Hamilton, you are a blessed man. Your family and all the wisdom that you've acquired over the years, all rooted really in the gospel. So thanks for being with us today, and thanks for joining and sharing your truly remarkable life. It's been an inspiration to me, and I know it's been an inspiration for our podcast listeners. So to all of our subscribers and listeners in podcast land, I hope today's episode was both empowering and inspirational. Until the next episode, I pray that our daily journeys are filled with opportunity to lift others up and inspire others as we aim to go above and beyond. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Drew.